everyone, this video will cover Module 4. So Module 4, we are moving on to the next essay assignment. You will be writing an argument proposal. So this module gets you introduced to the assignment and then also goes over some things that are probably things that you covered a little bit in Comp 1. And so we're just reinforcing that information, especially for those of you who maybe took Comp 1 a few years ago. And so you just need that refresher. So it'll be thesis statements and documentation. Now, depending on where you took Comp 1, who you took Comp 1 with, etc., you may or may not have had a lot of instruction in how to cite sources. And so that's something that's in here. And I encourage you, if you do not have a lot of experience with it, to use all the resources that are provided. So first up is thesis statements. Most students know what a thesis statement is by this point, but they maybe need a little refresher on like what makes a good thesis statement. So you're going to go over there a couple of readings here, and then you're just going to take the quiz. So that'll kind of help reinforce some of those things that you probably went over in Comp 1. And then the next thing that you're going to do is look at documentation. So documentation is one of the most challenging parts, I think, of any kind of writing class, particularly when we're focused so much on research. And because you have to be able to understand the differences between the different kinds of styles and not get yourself mixed up or confused as you're doing it, understand what the terminology means, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure that, you know, if it helps, make flashcards or whatever, just to help you understand when we use these words, like what do they mean, and what is the expectation for you. So I've got a couple of really good videos I highly recommend that you watch that just go over the basics. But there are 3 parts to documentation in the essay. You have your works cited page. So most students are familiar with that list of sources. If you need help with those works cited entries, you can use some kind of program like EasyBib, that's fine, but keep in mind that unless you do the manual entry where you actually type in the author and the title and everything, it will probably be wrong, and in some cases drastically wrong. So you want to make sure that you are really paying attention to and like comparing to what it should look like. The other 2 parts come under this in-text citation umbrella. You have the stuff in the sentence, so sometimes called an attributive tag, sometimes called a signal phrase, where you say according to, and then you include the author's name or the title, and then you include the source information. And then the other thing is the one in parentheses, which is parenthetical or in-text citation. And that is just that same information, but in the parentheses at the end of the sentence. So it's real basic, the 3 things that you want to be thinking about, but actually using them in practice can sometimes be a challenge. You definitely want to go over this section on the difference between summary, paraphrase, and quoting, because you will be expected to do that accurately in your sources, in your paper with your sources. And if you don't, you can get in trouble for accidentally plagiarizing, because that is something that we really want to emphasize. Something like leaving quotation marks off of a quotation is plagiarism, because you're telling the reader that this was not a direct quote when it actually was. So little things like that you need to focus on and pay attention to. So once you've gone through all those resources, make sure that you take that quiz for the documentation, and that's one, you know, it pulls from a pool, so if you really want to test your knowledge, go ahead and take it more than once. The highest score is going to be the one in the grade book. So the last part of the module then is focused on our next essay, which we will be doing for several modules. I think we have at least 3 modules for this one, and so right now we're just brainstorming your topic. So the whole essay is called an argument proposal. So rather than doing a standard like multi-sided argument essay, we're going to do something that's a little bit more focused, and that is a proposal argument. A proposal argument is different from a regular argument in that you already have the solution and you are arguing for its implementation. So you are proposing the solution to a problem rather than making a claim or taking a side or a stance on a major issue. So what you're going to do is figure out something. It could be something in your community, something in your work, something that just affects you, maybe something at school, something that affects you, And then you are going to decide what is the solution to that problem and how can we implement it? Who needs to be the ones to put it together, make the change, etc., and what can we implement? So, for example, I live in Osage City. There we have a big park in the middle of the city that everybody can use. And so when we first moved here, when we first had kids, there was a smaller play set that's like smaller, younger kids could play on. And that was terribly unsafe. It was broken. There were like pieces of metal sticking out. They finally took that out, but they replaced it with something that only older kids can play on. And so now there is just 2 structures for older children, and there's not really anything for younger kids. There's also nothing for kids who have maybe differing abilities or can't climb big structures or anything like that. And so one of the things that could be a solution to that would be to put in a 3rd play set that is focused on allowing kids who either have differing abilities or who are younger or have some other issues who can play happily, right? So we want to make sure that everybody can use the playground. So that solution would be to a problem. So here's the problem, here's the solution. What I would do in my essay is, kind of go over the background of the problem. There's a lot of space at this park, and so, there's plenty of room to put in a new playground structure. And then we can look at like the effects of the problem. We can look at how many kids might be affected by the fact that they don't have anything that's for anyone other than big children and big kids. And then feasibility and acceptability of the solution. There would be a lot of parents, I would think, that would support the idea. And so now we need to figure out what is the objection. The main objection to almost every proposal will be money, because nobody has any money and funding for things is really difficult to get. So my proposal would have to include things like we need to, look for grant money to be able to offset the cost. Playground equipment's terribly expensive, and so we would need to do some fundraising. That would need to be built into the city budget. There's all kinds of things that we could do, but we would have to. It'd probably be like a step-by-step process in order to complete. So I would have to look into some of the restrictions on playground equipment and that kind of thing. Part of that is doing a little bit of research. And so I want to find sources that not only support why we need inclusive playground equipment. So looking at like development and psychology sources for child development, but also looking at other places that have successfully built playgrounds that are inclusive, especially in smaller towns where the funding isn't as much. So I could definitely look there. And then I can also look for places where they do offer grant money and things like that. And so I could start to build up that research. I only need 2 sources for this essay, but I might want to find some more just in case. Some of it will be my first person experience as a parent, but some of it will come from the sources. And so I want to make sure there's a balance between the 2 because I don't want it to be all about me. The length of the essay is only 2 to 4 pages. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your proposal. A lot of students, if they get too much or their claim is too big, then they'll end up with a lot more information than they can put in a 2 to 4 page essay. So you want to be thinking of something real specific, like my example. There's some links here to kind of help you brainstorm some topics. And then part of what you're going to be doing, and don't forget there's a whole chapter in the textbook that covers what a proposal argument is, and that should help you kind of distinguish it in your head between other types of argument. But then the last thing that you're going to do in the module is your pre-writing journal, and this will hopefully help you come up with a good topic. So I've got this brainstorm question here that you're going to do as a free write, and so you just set your timer and you just type continuously about this topic, about this prompt, as many things as you can think of that kind of go along with this. With a free write, remember, you do not stop to fix errors. I want a bunch of errors on your page. It should look like you just went crazy all over the page with this free write. Underneath that, then you want to do some kind of focused brainstorm or cluster map, anything that shows visually how things connect together. So at this point, you want to just come up with a couple of specific ideas that you want for your essay topic. By number 3, you need to be cemented in your essay topic. This is what you're going to write your essay about, because we're going to create an outline. Now, this is again, and then the thesis for entry 4. Now, one of the things I want you to remember is that if you change your topic after you do your outline and thesis, you're going to need to do them again. We never want to start an essay cold with nothing that's brainstormed. So make sure that you keep that in mind. By this point, you need to have their idea really cemented. So that's what you're doing for this module. In the next module, we're actually going to start doing more with the content that you're going to include, and then we'll start drafting the essay. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. Otherwise, have a great week.